able to make it. Thank you again so much for coming. Really excited about this workshop, How to Run for Office. Our first speaker is Kate Delaney. Kate is the president of South Jersey Progressive Dems, a regional organization focused on building grassroots power for citizen-centered change across the state's southern counties. Kate is a lifelong South New Jerseyan, born and raised in Maple Shade, which is in Burlington County, and currently living in Collingswood in Camden County with her husband, 2 kids, and 2 pets. She shares her political analysis and as many fellow South Jersey activist stories and voices as possible at medium.com/events. Thank you, Kate, for coming. And to help Kate with this workshop is Carlo Favretto Jr. Carlo is the president of the Buena Vista Township Democratic Club in Buena Vista Township, New Jersey, and recently reelected to serve on the Buena Vista Regional Board of Education. Carlo earned a BA in history from Rowan University and taught as an adjunct professor at history at Atlantic Cape County Community College. He currently works in public health as a regional youth coordinator for the Incorruptible.us campaign, a program of tobacco-free for a healthy New Jersey. When not working, Carlo can be found gaming and creating content for his Twitch channel. Thank you both for coming, and thank you for hosting this session with us.
Thanks so much for having us. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you, with my friend Carlo. And Carlo, I did not write down the slides that you wanted to jump in on, but I'm sure we can.
I got them.
Cool. All right. So as Nick said, I run South Jersey Progressive Democrats, and we organize in South Jersey. So, there's some differences, I think, in our political landscape, but much of the challenges that we face as progressives in New Jersey, I think, are statewide. So when I was asked by PTB&J to do this, I really wanted to give a presentation that centered on all the things that I think we don't know when we start considering running for office in New Jersey. There's plenty of books that you can read, plenty of good websites and podcasts out there that walk through the process of running for office, right? Of any level. And there's good info for sure in those things. But I think that there's a lot of complications that come both with the format of our ballots, with just, living in a culture where political machines loom large in many counties. So I really wanted to pay forward all of the electoral lessons that South Jersey Progressive Dems have amassed along the way. We've been around since 2017, and we always participate in the primary elections, and we've had some great wins and some spectacular defeats, and we probably have learned more actually from the losses. So that's the gist behind this presentation. And Carlo has been on Board of Ed for quite a while now and is expert on those races. So he's going to jump in and talk a little bit about that. And I can go quickly or slowly through various points, whatever works best for folks. But let me just jump in here and share my screen. All right. And all right. So, like I said, the goal here is how to run for office, and specifically with some very, Jersey-centric know-how that I think is difficult to gain unless you've been through these experiences. So some very Jersey-specific lessons on how to run for office as a progressive challenger outside of the existing political structure. So to start, I want to focus on some things that I think are very Jersey-specific about running for office. So as many people on this call already know, we have a ballot that is exceptional in our country in that it is arranged in columns or lines. So this means that in order to have a competitive placement on the ballot, you have to bracket. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, if it's a new term for anyone. But bracketing is really required for a competitive race. And this does add another layer of work when you're running for office. It means that you have to recruit, file, even campaign a little bit more. Jersey, as we know, is a very blue state. So, this means that in a lot of places, the real elections are in the primary, right? Not the general. So this means we've got a lot of intra-party warfare, which I think is a unique challenge, right? This makes things different in terms of endorsements, right? Because we're asking for endorsements of people to endorse not just Democrats, but Progressive Democrats. It causes, funding challenges, and certainly means that we have to shape our narratives differently, right, than if we're going up against Republicans. Again, because we are a blue state, there are a lot of organizations that just will not support progressives because it's bad for business, right? It's too much of a gamble for them. So I think, wrapping our minds around that is really essential, right? It's just a fact that progressives have to accept. We all know there's a lot of money in our elections. However much money you think is in our elections, it's more than that. This doesn't mean that, we need to focus on raising lots of money in our campaigns, but we do need to face the fact of funding for our campaigns, and on every level, right? I've seen lots of big money in school board elections. There's always big money in county committee elections in Camden County. So money is a huge problem. And as some of us know, so is the New Jersey media. As Carlo and I think can attest, it's really bad in South Jersey. There just isn't media, right? There isn't media coverage for progressives, or frankly, when there is coverage, it's not flattering. So this means we really need to be aware, be ready for that. How are we going to counter that invisibility, or how are we going to counter a narrative that makes us look like kind of, petulant children rather than real competitors? So bracketing. I remember when I first started electoral organizing with some of the existing South Jersey Progressive Dems folks, hearing the term bracketing and we need a bracket, and having no idea what that term meant. So really the short, explanation is a bracket, right, is just what gets you a line on the ballot. So again, as I think almost everyone knows, right, our ballots are arranged in columns or lines. In order to get a line on the ballot, you need to have county commissioner candidates. So that's how you get a line. This means that you need to recruit people to run for that office, which can be a challenge. When we first started doing this, they were called freeholders. We asked people, do you want to run for freeholder? And most people told us, I have no idea what a freeholder is. Who are our freeholders? Who am I even running against? So it's also a challenge, I think, for voters, right? Because it really is an invisible layer of office. People don't pay attention to county office. But it's worth doing, I think, just to get a line, to get better placement. You can win from the edges of the ballot. We've done it in South Jersey, but it's hard. It's difficult. And, you end up, if you don't have a good placement, having to talk about the ballot all the time. So in order to get a bracket, and I'm happy to unpack this, more or another time, but there are a lot of paperwork that has to be filed, right? You need nominating petitions for all the offices that you're trying to bracket together. So if you're people running for county committee, for commissioner, for higher up office, they all need to file paperwork together under a shared slogan. And you need to also file something that's called a bracketing letter. And this needs to be submitted to every place that you're filing the paperwork. And usually bracketing letters are issued by the county party. So when we bracketed this past June, I was told you need a bracketing letter. And I said, how do I get a bracketing letter? They said, you have to get it from the Camden County Dems. I said, well, I don't want to bracket with them. They're like, well, then you'll have to make your own. I had no idea how you have to make a bracketing letter. So I did pull one together. So again, going back to the point of this, I want to pay all that forward. So there is paperwork. Bracketing is worth it. It is an extra headache, but it gets you better placement on the ballot. So again, right, bracketing, it's just kind of a necessary evil, but your bracket can fall apart. And this has happened to us in South Jersey. So things that can happen, they can challenge your county commissioner candidates and they can get you thrown off the ballot. We've had that in past elections in 2019 that happened to us. It's not a reason to throw in the towel if you don't bracket. But it does mean, first of all, that you will need to talk a lot about the ballot as you're campaigning. So, we've in the past, when we've been in ballot Siberia, we've gone around like Ed McMahon with a giant check. We've had like a giant version of the ballot and said, like, we're over here on the edge of the page. So it does mean that you'll have to do some different campaigning. And it means that you won't be in the ballot draw. So the ballot draw is when the county clerk determines where you're going to be on the ballot. So if you have a bracketed line, you can, in theory, be column one, though I think that almost never happens. I do think it happened to Stacey Berger, so I shouldn't say never, but rarely. If you don't have a bracketed column, you end up just in their catch-all other category. In Camden County, they call that the dissident Democrats, and then they just end up putting you all together. So you'll be with people that are running for the same office. It's a very confusing space. So moral of the story, try to bracket. If you can't bracket, all is not lost, but just know that you'll have some additional complications. Nominating petitions, again, I know that people have on this call have run before. So these are things that I've learned in running campaigns, just ways to think better about these various pieces of the process. So I think, the best way to think about nominating petitions is not just like a quick piece of paper where I need to circulate, get the names, and then hand it in. They are a gatekeeping exercise, right? So once the establishment knows who's running, they're absolutely going to use your nominating petition to try and get you thrown off the ballot. They are going to scrutinize every signature to make sure it's not same hand. They're going to check registration. They're going to check, names to make sure they match the voter rolls. So it's something you want to make sure that it is really bulletproof, that every signature you have on there is good. Because if not only will they throw you off the ballot, they will probably also send the information to David Wildstein so that he can write an article about how you couldn't get enough signatures to be on the ballot. They should also be a show of strength, right? So if you need 100 signatures, plan on getting 200, plan on getting 300, right? So if you're right out of the gate saying, I've got all of these supporters, right? It's more reason for both your opponents as well as voters to see this is a viable candidate. And, you should use them for campaigning and canvassing. When I did this in Collingswood, in a way, it felt counterintuitive, right? To be like starting a campaign before I was officially on the ballot. But it's a great conversation actually to have at the door saying, I'm running for office and I need your support to get on the ballot. And here's what my campaign is going to be about. It's a very nice, specific ask for people at the door. Would you sign my nominating petition? And then you can add, can I come back later? And, would you be interested in a lawn sign? Would you be interested in doing some phone banking? So it's also a good way to kick off your campaign. So again, those are just, I'm sure folks on this call have already done this, but just ways to do a little bit more with those documents.
Yeah, and I'll just stress Kate's importance of getting more signatures, especially if you're planning on running for a Board of Ed seat, because typically the required signatures for Board of Ed is not nearly as much as a municipal council seat or other office. And surprisingly enough, I feel like the school board candidates definitely get their signatures challenged the most, especially if they are running against a machine-backed candidate, even though they're not supposed to do that. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But definitely get more signatures for Board of Ed.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, Board of Ed is only 10 signatures. If anybody has a problem with that, they got bigger problems.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the offices that are, more local there's not a ton of signature requirements, but again, it's worth it to get extra. Some other data that you definitely want to know, right? Your win number. This is important to tabulate. There's different ways to tabulate what your win number is. You can add in various levels of complexity. But you need to make sure what is ultimately the number that you need to get to, because this will help you as you're, marking down the supporters that you have. Voter lists are a public document. Again, this might be something that everyone on this call knows, but sometimes people don't know this information. So you can request that, file an open request to get voter lists. But you should be aware, unless you are like an actual, wizard with Excel, that what they're going to give you is just a document of voter information. And then you're going to need someplace to put that information, right? So, South Jersey Progressive Dems, we've run on a shoestring many times. So we have had folks that have, spliced up a Google Sheet into various tabs, and we've used that to create turf. But yeah, thinking about it, how are you going to get that information? There's expensive software out there like Van, right, which is the database that the party uses. That's $500 per month. So you probably want to look at what options are out there, but you definitely need some way to make sure that you're maintaining that data. That's so important for grassroots organizations and candidates. And then a campaign budget. As a progressive challenger, you're going to be outspent. That's inevitable. But what do you need in order to run the kind of campaign that you want to run? Do you want to send a mailer? Do you want to send multiple mailers? Do you want to have lawn signs? Do you want to have swag, right? You're thinking about what does that look like? And, for South Jersey Progressive Dems, we always also add in a legal challenge because we always expect it. So, what is it going to take to get you across the finish line without excessively, digging into your own pockets along the way and ending up at the end, really feeling the financial hurt of that. The statutory state timeline is a really important document to know and is really a great way to sort of guide your calendar of events as you're thinking about tactics along the way. So obviously you want to make sure that you know the date for filing. In South Jersey Progressive Dems land, we usually don't file until almost the very end of the day on the day of filing, because the Norcross machine has grabbed our slogan many a time, or, you know, used as a copycat slogan. Other things to know is, what is the deadline for challenging nominating petitions? The gatekeeping of nominating petitions is a nasty game, but you know, I think it's worth progressives considering jumping into that space, right? You know, we found out in the past, we had to challenge some phantom candidates that it was not as hard as we thought, or it was possible to do that challenging just with the publicly available voter list. So, you know, you should at least consider that option, getting their nominating petitions, looking at who's signing theirs, and is there anything that should be challenged? If you bracket, even if you don't bracket, I think it's worth going to the ballot draw. It's kind of a weird, you know, public event. We always do a video of it. People are always intrigued to know that's how the ballot is shaped. Again, even if you don't bracket, it's worth going there. I think it helps for the county clerks to know that we know the process. We're going to show up. We're going to make it into a little, you know, weirdo public event. We've done that for many years in South Jersey. Vote by mail is, I think, a democracy plus, but is definitely a campaign challenge for progressives, right? That we usually don't have good ballot placement. We don't have the name recognition of incumbents. We don't have the ability necessarily to send endless rounds of mailers. So in my view, it is essential for progressives to hit doors way before the vote by mail ballots go out. So that is always the first thing I circle on my calendar. When do I have before people start getting their ballots? You almost have to run a VBM campaign and then a vote in person campaign. And then a deadline. If you were going to challenge and you're going to do a recount, when do you need to do that? So again, this is all publicly available. It's not out yet, but I check often just to see when it's live. And again, just kind of marking your calendar.
Yeah, and you know, I would add to just to be wary, especially for school board candidates, like elect dates for you, because some people running for school board don't know that they're required to fill out an elect like any other candidate, and often don't hit the deadlines. And that's super important, especially again, if you're running against machine-backed candidates that will challenge you. Not that they will challenge you at every point, right? So do check that out, even though it's very minimal for school board candidates to fill out some elect forms. You know, you don't want to catch somebody, for example, if you made a lawn sign that just said, you know, you're running for Board of Ed, they could take that and nitpick it if they want, if it hasn't been reported correctly. So just be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, it is unfair, but for sure they go after anyone, even if it's like you didn't report that, like you raised $100 or something.
Mm-hmm.
They make it sound like it's the same as them raising 100,000. Yeah, Jeremy.
Yeah, if you start an account, if you open an account to spend money, then you need to file a D1, but school board candidates never file an A1 unless you spend over $5,800. The D1 is the only form you're ever going to spend, unless you get an expense in excess of $300 or a contribution in excess of $300. Then you just need to bang out the C1 on the 10-day pre-election.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and that's a great detail, Carlo. I'm glad that you brought that up, because yeah, the elect stuff can be a lot to manage as you're also managing a campaign. Yeah, and then, you know, obviously when you're running, you need to be thinking about like who is on your team and what roles can people play. You know, you can try and play most of them yourself, but you will definitely be overextended. So thinking about, you know, what do you need people to do, right? And who do you have in your life? You know, who do you have that you organize with that is good at social media or knows how to build a website? Or, you know, maybe you have attorney friends who can help you with legal advice or notarize documents. So again, I think it really pays when you're thinking about your candidacy, thinking about what can people do? And, you know, if they're volunteering, you need to think about also what do people like to do, right? So it's, you know, it's a hard sell to get someone to do a job that is just kind of out of their purview or their interest. So yeah, matching the people in your life with tasks that you need that is a tangible way for them to help you. And really, you know, more and more I'm trying to say, if you're in the movement and you really want to see progressives win, then it really is important to find a way to help on campaigns, right? That, just voting or watching at home and being a fan is not enough, right? So offer some kind of service, right? Maybe you can amplify social media. Maybe you can phone bank or run a phone bank. But yeah, right. So again, you need people to help, and then people that want to see candidates win. It means that when we're running against the party, we don't have the party apparatus. So we really do need the movement to help our candidates. Yeah, so I mean, again, kind of the same thing. Incumbents have lots of money. They have endless opportunities to get more money. So, in South Jersey, the candidates basically just invest in expensive media buys, right? And they, hammer us with endless ads for Donald Norcross on every platform. Probably, as a progressive, you're not going to have that kind of cash. So this means, a really intense ground game and thinking really like, again, how can you get people to help you with that? So, who are your people that will canvass, that will maybe host parties, who like to write and will write a letter to the editor, who might, have a rally or some kind of visibility event for you. So again, it really, involves thinking creatively to leverage what you have, right? Which is people power, boots on the ground, even if it's not the big bucks for, the TV ads.
Yeah, and I think this is something also that we typically overlook. You got to go, you have to knock doors. And if the last 2 or 3 election cycles aren't indicative of that, especially here in South Jersey with the way our election results have been recently, and that is moving more towards, red counties or red controlled areas. You got to knock the doors. It can no longer be a time of you assume that you're safe because you're a Democrat in a blue state. That's not how that works. And especially it's 10 times harder for us as progressives during the primary, because those Democrats that you're running against are going to assume that they already have the election won. So you have to make sure that you are knocking doors, whether that's for a local political office or even school board, because I can tell you half the time, people don't ever know who's running for school board in their town unless it's a huge contested race. So make sure you're knocking doors.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, right? Like, I mean, so often people tell us that they don't know the candidate. No one's ever knocked their door before. No one's ever asked for their vote. So I mean, my experience in canvassing, people want that engagement, right? I think people tend after a while to just tune out to all the ads. I know I was overwhelmed for the general election, all the ads. So, it's difficult to reach people this way. It is a challenge, but again, right, it's a challenge that we just need to build into our campaigning and to, our budget, into all of our plans. Endorsements. So this is a tricky area. I think it's a tricky area increasingly for progressives in New Jersey. So I mean, I think it's important to be sort of strategic and, just eyes wide open when it comes to endorsement process. So, paper endorsements can be worth it, right? A paper endorsement is one where it doesn't come with anything, not money, not volunteers, just an organization that puts their, your face up with their logo. And maybe that's useful, right? If it really connects to a value that's really essential to your campaign. So, or maybe not, right? Maybe you have so little time that you don't want to apply for an endorsement that doesn't at least come with like some phone bankers or something. As a progressive challenger, if you're running against the party's not going to endorse you, obviously. You might not get a fair process, right? In some places it does happen. I've been like on calls for like Mercer County, where they do have a real convention. Atlanta County has a convention. South Jersey generally does not. I know a lot of places in North Jersey as well. So is it worth pointing out that there's a lack of process to even be considered for a Democratic party endorsement? Maybe, maybe not. It really does depend on, if it connects with what you want to say in your campaign. And then, there are a lot of organizations that are very party adjacent that will not endorse you, because they know who butters their bread and isn't you. Is it worth pointing that out? I don't know. Again, it depends on what you want to say, what kind of time you have in your campaign. But yeah, I think these are, the challenges. I don't know, Carlo, did you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, at least from the school board perspective, it gets trickier. And the reason it gets trickier, I can tell you, I've been to plenty of our New Jersey School Board Association trainings. And one that they always give on ethics is a huge stress that school board races are not to be partisan. If they are in any way, you can get ethics charges filed against you, even if you win the election, and then they can refuse to seat you. And so I always ask these questions at every training. I'm like, well, I'm in a precarious situation. I'm a president of my local Democratic club. I'm running for school board, even though it's nonpartisan. How does that work? And to my surprise, you can't even, let's say you make a yard sign of yourself running for school board. You cannot, in your own yard, put that sign next to a candidate that is party affiliated in any way. That will get you ethics charges very quick. And it's crazy to say that, because we especially know, like the Republican Party now are running folks for school board for this specific partisan affiliation. And so it's so wild to me that things like that are happening. So, just think about it. Endorsements do matter. Endorsements are important to amplify your message and your promotion, but just be wary, and make sure that you're following that sort of little tricky line.
Yeah, and that is wild because, yeah, like you said, the far right is definitely waded in fully to that space. So yeah, I mean, I think that means being creative, if you're running the primary, about what endorsements look like, right? So, I mean, there's alternatives that you can look for, right? So organizations outside of the state might be willing to endorse you. If you're running in a local campaign, I think having the endorsement or support in some way of an important community group can be really powerful. Or just some individuals, right, that will be kind of like influencers and say, I support this candidate and why. And again, that can help kind of counter some of the media invisibility that I think so much of, Jersey faces, and definitely progressives face. Did you want to chime in on anything?
Oh, yes, sorry. For a school board perspective, another alternative to endorsement, if you start developing that community relationship with your local educators, allowing them to amplify your message, whether or not, you have students or youth of your own who are attending the school district, but you're active, right? Remember, your educators are a part of your community. And they can amplify your message just as big as any organization. So really developing those relationships is very important.
Yeah, for sure. And I did like a little endorsement of one of our school board candidates, right? And, it was a way to also be nonpartisan, right? So obviously I have an affiliation, but I wasn't in that. I was just as a community member and parent. Yeah, so I mean, thinking about what it means to run, I mostly did not orient this presentation around why run, right? Because I think we all kind of are in touch with our why do this. So this is really just like usually my litmus test of like whether it's worth taking on a really difficult fight, that, and a positive outcome is not guaranteed or even possibly likely. And certainly South Jersey Progressive Dems has been in those fights before. So this is kind of how we usually adjudicate whether that's worth it for us. So some goals that we try to achieve, even in a race where we think we don't necessarily have a chance to win. We've been really focused on this kind of stuff, right? So really expanding our stock of knowledge about what it takes to run an election. I think there's a lot of things you just can't learn from the sidelines. So in doing the whole thing, soup to nuts, year after year, we've learned a lot about, the paperwork. We've learned a lot about deadlines, tactics, all of it. So, it's worth it for that alone, right? To have that knowledge, and our goal has been to share out that knowledge and all the stuff that we've learned over the years. We have had some success of, advancing issue campaigns through electoral challenges, right? So if we can't get a politician to engage on an issue, when Mario DeSantis ran against Donna Norcross, he did force Donna Norcross to support Medicare for all. I think that pushed Norcross over the edge, was having a challenge from the left. And we have other local issues, right? Sometimes like in the county that we want to force the county to talk about, environmental justice stuff, and they won't engage with us except at campaign time when we make them talk about it. And again, it can be an opportunity to base build, right? And we try to attach that to like some actual metrics. So thinking about, bringing in X number of new volunteers to the movement, building out in various locations. So again, I think that these are all valid reasons to take on a really challenging race where you're the underdog, but that you will get things out of it, right? That you can really say were useful to you as a progressive, as a candidate, to the movement. And then finally, since I have everyone here, I also wanted to make a small plug. And Carlo, did you have anything you wanted to add on that last one?
Just to mention, and I kind of mentioned this in the last slide, when we have individuals from the far right or the closeted Dems that are actually Republicans running for these offices, it's so important to make sure that, the fight that you are fighting is the right one. It is the just one. From a school board perspective, I get it all the time where I have people from the opposite side of the aisle who are coming to school board meetings and saying, not understanding like the new state standards, whether that be on LGBTQ plus or racial equity or, the new sex education standards, for example, is a huge one. They just don't read anything. And so it's so important that you maintain the fight for what is just and what is right, and know that you're doing it, because there are folks that want to send us back more than 50 years in history, and do that sort of thing. Yes, enjoy. I enjoy your comment. So yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's where I'll leave that.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Like you said, it's a way to amplify that and to do kind of, public education on what those issues are, because like you said, people don't read, they don't want to get this information. The campaign sort of forces them to get that. Yeah. And like I said, while I have you here, I also wanted to shine a light on some very South Jersey specific things, which if you follow me on Twitter, I talk about a lot. So one issue we have in Camden County is recurring phantom candidates, which has been deemed a criminal activity in Florida recently. The phantom candidates are real people, but they're recruited to run as fake candidates by the establishment, and they're there to act as spoilers, and they push us further over on the ballot. So this has been the bane of our existence for over a decade now. Also in Camden County and only Camden County, our Democratic committee races are run at large, winner take all, without any district representation. So this means that for us running in this race in the primary, we need to recruit a team of 72, for instance, in Cherry Hill to run against their 72, and we either win or lose the whole thing. A lot of South Jersey, as we've already said, is a media desert, and this is, very challenging to get the word out and to shine a light on new candidates who are not, the establishment Democrats or Republicans, but are new people that want to be part of, the political landscape and have good ideas and talents to contribute. And then, we've experienced definitely in Camden County, a lot of harassment and people being threatened for running for office. I twice have had running mates who have lost their jobs after they filed their paperwork. So if you would want to support us, we definitely want to tackle the phantom candidates this year. There's a QR code just to be on our list for upcoming ghost busting activities so that we can have a better ballot in Camden County. All right, so I will stop sharing. Carlo, did you want to add anything? Well, let me stop sharing first.
I was going to put it in the chat, but just that if there are any South Jersey peeps here, we would love to connect with you in one way or another. Doesn't matter what county you're in, we want to talk because this is really a fight that regionally we can take together. So I know you'll probably all have, Kate and I's contact info. Kate, if you don't mind putting your info in the chat, I'll put mine too. So you can reach out to us. Yeah, we got to hit the ground running. So 2023 is fast approaching.
Outstanding. Well, thank you both for sharing those insights and for sharing your experience. And I'm sure, I hope everybody took at least something away from this presentation. There's a lot of good insights there, a lot against. Might have to go back and read it one more time a little thoroughly. But I'll stop right now. We have a couple minutes, so if anyone has a question that they want to throw out there, just raise your hand, use the raised hand icon, and I'll call on you. Oh, is that you? I see you raise your hand there.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to raise the icon. But this is really, really good presentation. And I just have a question about this because I guess this is a personal question. I'm newly elected school board in North Brunswick for a 3-year term. And I'm really interested in running for the county committee for my district because Bob, like, Bob Smith and Egan, like that's my district, 17. And Egan's almost 90 or is 90, then, it's like it is the machine, but can school board members, can they run for county committee in those type of parties, or is that a conflict of interest, and would the member have to leave their school board seat?
You can run for county committee. You just cannot hold like a municipal office and school board office at the same time, but you can be on your local county committee.
So, meaning county committee is like, I could also essentially be like a Congress, like, could you be a state congressman and senator and school board?
No. You cannot hold an elected position within your political party and be on a school board at the same time, but county committee does not act in the same way. So your county committee is you're serving your county committee is you're serving your party, but you are not serving an elected capacity that would conflict. So you are making decisions like for your party. That's what county committee is supposed to do. But you in no way, shape, or form are performing the same the duties of someone who might conflict.
All right, everybody, time to wrap up. We are going to move into our next session.
Okay. Sort of to just to wrap that up, you can run for an office and be a school board member at the same time. You would just have to resign from one position if you are currently holding that elected space.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's political office versus party office is a good way to think about it, right? So if your party office, you're not making any like municipal political decisions, you're not legislating anything, you're just making decisions about party operations.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Thank you so much. That helps a lot.
All right. Thank you both. Thank you both again. We're going to everybody jump back into the main room so we can get ready for session 2.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.